A couple of weeks ago, you couldn't scroll past a single row of videos on your YouTube feed without getting a thumbnail with Sidney Sweeny's boobs on them or the words "Sweet Baby Inc." on the titles of every other video. And I didn't even know who Sidney Sweeny was up until that point.
You definitely did not see me in Madam Web.
I just figured she was some Hollywood actress who got caught up on this, that, or the other controversy about something that both sides of the war feel strongly about. What really did surprise me was to see the name of this notoriously bad actor in the world of video games coming up in every other video. Why now, I thought. So naturally, I clicked on some of them to see what was up. And it turned out that some Brazilian curator on Steam who goes by the name of Kabrutus started a group called Sweet Baby Inc. Detected, in which he listed all the games that this company had been involved with in some capacity. And although it was almost no different from the list of games that the company itself shows on its website, gamers took it as a list that was meant to warn them about the company's involvement in these games. And people started subbing to this group by the hundreds of thousands, and I'm not even kidding you. And they weren't exactly eager to jump to Sweet Baby Inc.'s defense in the comment sections of these games, quite the contrary as you might imagine. It was a shitstorm. The ruckus was such that the company itself demanded that Kabrutus be banned on the grounds of opinion giving. Harassment. And just so that we're on the same page, this is the brand of harassment that you can find on the group. Keep in mind that this curator group has the goal of letting people know about the games that Sweet Baby Inc. worked on. We are not in any means a group that is trying to kill SBI or even convince people not to buy any game that they've worked on. Everyone is free to buy any game, even if it's a game that SBI worked on. It's your decision. Also, I want to emphasize that this is not a place for those who want to practice bigotry or racism towards any specific group of people or praise any kind of authoritarianism, be it from the left or the right. I don't care about your skin color, nor sex, gender, and sexual orientation, not even your religion. You're welcome to join and stay as long as you respect our position and don't try to jeopardize this community.
I don't want to hear what that bigot has to say.
Yes, the harassment is strong in this one. And this is what Sweet Baby Inc. thinks should be done about it. This has escalated into a full-blown war that has been labeled Gamergate 2. The established media, some of which is dying more than established these days, has doubled down on its gaslighting and its anti-gamer speech, and some of them have even called for a purge of gamers in gaming. And of course, independent YouTubers who are invested in the culture war have retaliated, as they should. As for Sweet Baby Inc. Detected, as a gamer, I think we had been needing something like this for a long time. And I say something like this because in order for this group to deliver on its promise, which is to warn us about a certain special brand of shittiness that has become all too frequent in video games these days, it would need to take into account all the bad actors that make up this huge sub-industry of gaming that has been built around DEI credit score, not just Sweet Baby Inc. The group should have been called Evil Entity Detected or something along those lines, because Sweet Baby Inc. is but a tiny dot in a huge toxic system of third-party service providers like Sweet Baby Inc. themselves, DEI departments, activist journalists, game developers who are ready to stamp the labels of toxic and narcissistic on entire groups of customers who reject ideas like the ones espoused by Sweet Baby Inc., and large asset management corporations and private credit managers who strong-arm companies into enforcing diversity and inclusion hiring policies and spreading forth the message. I have been wanting to talk about this topic for almost as long as the channel has been up. And now that everyone and their mom are talking about Sweet Baby Inc. and its clients and Gamergate 2, it's time for me to talk about the things that I think have been missing in the discussion, which are many. So allow me this brief parenthesis in the channel's regular content. Don't worry about me turning into an anti-establishment culture war obsessed zealot. After this video, we're going to go back to our regular content. Expect Dragon Age Origins, Sovereign Syndicate, Outward, and maybe Dragon's Dogma 2, and some other stuff. But for now, let's focus on Sweet Baby Inc. and the maelstrom of shit that originated from Sweet Baby Inc. Detected. And these are the topics that, in my estimation, need to be addressed to properly evaluate Sweet Baby Inc.'s role and its importance in the grand scheme of things. First, the culture war. Second, the actors, which are all the relevant stakeholders in this matter. And these include the customers, video game developers, publishers, and third-party consultants, and asset management companies. And third, what should we do about it? And let's start with the culture war. This term gets thrown around a lot in videos and discussions that involve media and entertainment these days. But I think that any analysis of a film, video game, or TV show that goes beyond the film itself and seeks to address the topic of the current state of entertainment as an industry to explain why said film or game has this special flavor of shittiness,
Bigot sandwiches.
will almost inevitably fail to answer some of the most important questions, most especially those that start with why, when it has the culture war as its turnstone. Gamergate 2 is just the latest, hottest battle in the culture war. But the culture war, in turn, is just one of many battlegrounds for a much broader war. While culture does trickle into every other aspect of human interaction, it has to be said that there are several battlegrounds in this war. Media and entertainment constitute one of the most important ones, certainly, but there's also academia, big tech, and public policy making, and many others. So this war is between two factions. Faction number one, people who have grown resentful because they believe they have been oppressed by a group who have instituted a system of discrimination based on some arbitrary criteria that includes skin color, ethnicity, sex, sexual orientation, and identity. These people blatantly disregard the basic principle of justice that states that every individual is innocent unless otherwise proven. If you are a straight white male, then you're either an oppressor or you have enjoyed a privilege that you didn't earn and you aren't even aware of it, but you have earned it at the expense of someone else's opportunities. You also have opportunists who don't believe any of this shit, but have smelled that the time is right for them to climb a few steps of the ladder easily because it is convenient for someone to let them climb said ladder. And then you have the worst of the lot. Those who seek totalitarian power, purposefully fuel these notions, validate this group's resentment, and tell them what they want to hear.
When you want to help people, you tell them the truth. When you want to help yourself, you tell them what they want to hear.
Everything is sexist, everything is racist, everything is homophobic.
Academia, for example, is rarely mentioned in discussions about the culture war, but it is the main platform by which these motherfuckers promote these ideas. It's the hose that waters the plant of the unconstrained vision of the world, cosmic justice, and critical race theory.
It means equalizing the prospects of everybody. The requirements for cosmic justice must be handmade and tailored to each individual case. Some third party must intervene to determine whether the outcomes are right, whether the prospects are right.
And this plant blooms into an army of allies of the resentful. Where do you think people like this come from? This group lives in an echo chamber that has been fortified by academia, and it is completely oblivious about how the market they operate in works. And they don't really care. For now, that is. Faction 2 is, well, everyone else. Some of us are white straight dudes making videos in our basement, yes. But you also have the gay person who says this.
The gay community, I hate that, that phrase. I know, even as you said it, it's like, it doesn't mean anything to me. I don't think of you as part of the straight community.
The black person who says this.
Over the past 10 years, there's been a real upswing in what many have called anti-racism that comes out of critical race theory. And their philosophy is that, you know, a white guy like you should be more or less constantly thinking about how your whiteness has given you privilege, how your whiteness blinds you to the realities that a black person like me can see. Now, I view that as, in fact, racist. It's in fact racist to suggest that different races of people should live by different sets of books. Instead of anti-racism, I call it neo-racism. And I substitute my own form of anti-racism, which is your race does not matter. Your race says nothing about who you are. It doesn't say whether you're smart or dumb. It doesn't say whether you're kind or mean. It doesn't speak to any of your deeper values.
Or this.
Whenever I hear notions of fairness in education, I think back to my own education. And I think, thank God my teachers were unfair to me when I was a kid growing up in Harlem. One of these teachers was a lady named Miss Simon. who belonged to what might be called the General Patton School of Education. I cannot even imagine that Miss Simon gave a moment's thought to my self-esteem. Now, was this fair in Rawlsian terms? And the answer is no. Like many of the children in Harlem at that time, I came from a home where nobody had gone beyond elementary school. I still remember what a big fuss was made when I was promoted to the 7th grade because I'd gone further than anyone else. In later years, when I graduated from Harvard, there was no such fuss. They expected me to. But fairness was never an option. There was nothing Miss Simon or anybody else could do about the fact that we came from homes where we did not have books and magazines, and we were not as familiar with those words as people from other neighborhoods might have been. So that was never an option. Nothing that schools could have done would have changed that. It would have been an irresponsible self-indulgence for them to have pretended to make things fair. If there's anything worse than unfairness, it is make-believe fairness. And that would have made them feel good. It would not have done much for us. Instead, they forced us to meet standards that were a little harder for us to meet than they were for some other kids, but far more necessary for us to meet, because that was the only way out of poverty.
Or this.
Who makes a standard for pro-blackness, and why should I care about my blackness anyway? My identity is not my blackness. When you make a group that says this is for this type of skin color only, you have no grounds to complain that other people of other skin colors can do the same thing. But here's the thing, my friends. I don't see the world through a racial lens. When it really comes down to it, the only diversity that matters is diversity of thought.
And the trans person who says this.
I think that trans women who are actually trans, we're talking gender dysphoria, transitions, making the effort, probably once you reach a certain point in your transition where you can actually assimilate within that space and not cause a disruptance, that would probably be the ideal time to start doing that, right? Whereas, a cross-dresser who is emboldened to, in this current climate, say that they're trans because now anything is trans if you say so, that person should probably stay absolutely out of women's restrooms, because you're there to get your rocks off and the women are there to take a poop and a pee. So it's not the same.
And you would think that these things don't have anything to do with gaming. And they don't, because again, this war isn't about gaming. It isn't even about culture. It's about the two great opposing visions of the world as described by Tom Sowell in his book A Conflict of Visions. Our faction embraces the constrained vision of the world. All of us, straight, gay, white, black, cis, and trans, understand that in life, sometimes you have to dance with the ugliest chick in the party, and it's up to you to make the most out of it. There is no point in complaining to the host of the party or advocating for a change in the rules of partying so that everyone gets to dance with the pretty ladies. Their faction, on the other hand, espouses the unconstrained vision of the world. They say, that's easy for you to say. You always get to dance with the pretty ladies, and that is a privilege. If we change the rules of the house just a little, we can enjoy this privilege and make the party enjoyable for everyone. As for the war itself, I've seen more versions of this play than bad Hollywood remakes and sequels of our favorite films in the last 8 years. The actors change, but the goals, the MO, and the structure of the factions remain the same. The parties that make up their faction have different goals. Some wish to be given those opportunities they believe they have been deprived of. Some others want to seize the opportunity, and yet some others seek to be the sole shot callers who dictate how things should be in every aspect of human interaction, to have their policies and the rules supersede consensus, and in some cases the law itself. The MO, strategically speaking, is to remove common folk from the decision-making process in every strategic area: education, communication, finances, culture, etc. And they seek this because they truly believe they know better. As for the structure, their faction resembles a mafia organization as described by Henner Hess in his book Mafia and Mafiosi: Origin, Power, and Myth. To put it simply, a mafia faction has two major groups, the Cosca and the Partito. The Cosca are the shot callers, the inner circle, the ones who choose the goals and the strategy. And the Partito are those who adhere to said plan, the ones who buy the speech. These are the people who have been stewing in their own locus of external control and consumed by resentment. And a good chunk of people who aren't resentful or evil. They are just white knighting for the cause, or supporting it because they do not know the true purpose of those who are at the top of the faction. And then you have those who do know what the true purpose of those who are part of the Cosca is. I'm talking about the Xbox game studios, the 2Ks, and the Ubisofts of the world. These actors adhere to the faction because they seek to be part of that sweet ESG credit and investment system. These are the people who push hard for these rules of thumb and advocate for the inclusion of certain features in video games like pronouns, body types, and vitiligo and heterochromia options. They claim they do it for people with vitiligo and heterochromia, and they may even believe it themselves. Unfortunately, features like this are also included to appease bad actors, and it gives them power over the industry. And that's why a good chunk of video game fans reject these features. You can bet your bottom dollar that if these video games had come out in the year 2009, the same fans who are now saying this,
fucking pronouns! Fucking gender ambiguity! Fucking current day Californian shit!
wouldn't have given a shit. They probably would have scratched their heads, wondered why these features were included in the game in the first place, and they would have gone on to play their game without making a fuss about it. Gamers don't have a problem with these features themselves. After all, most of these features don't really force you to make a trans black character with vitiligo, but they do have a huge problem with the reason why these features are being included in their games. These features are not for my friend Mapita, who suffers from vitiligo and yet refers to herself as Mapita, which means little map in Spanish, because she's totally over the bullying that she was subjected to in high school when they compared her face to a map. A person who explicitly said, if you need the vitiligo feature to feel represented, you are the one with the issue, not the game. You are the one who's reducing your identity to that trait alone. You are the one who expects the world to be understanding of your condition instead of making the effort to be part of the world as you are. These features are not for my trans friend Sophie, who said, I've always chosen to be a female in games in which you can't choose your sex, but I don't need the game to reflect the way I look in real life. If the protagonist is a guy, then he's a guy. I think these people need to go out more and meet more people. People who will tolerate them and people who won't, and learn to live with it. 5 years ago, my city was a living hell for me. I would get called horrible things and looked at with disgust. But passing as a woman is the most important thing when you are trans. Passing as a woman in the eyes of others, that is. And that's something you can't impose upon others, just like you can't impose upon others not to call you horrible things. And looking for safe spaces, as they call them now, where no one would be mean to you is idiotic, because you are bypassing the problem rather than solving it. You need to look the part. It takes effort, time, commitment, and a lot of money. And I didn't have the money, for example. I had to fix and build a lot of computers and do a lot of shitty jobs that I didn't like to look the way I do now. But not even for a moment did I expect others to accept me or even tolerate me. I knew the ball was in my court. I knew I had to be the one to do the effort. These features are not there for the black gamer who doesn't give a shit about the color of the character he's playing, or for the female gamer who has played The Witcher 3 or 4 times from beginning to end, because she's perfectly happy to play as Geralt. These features are there for the narcissists, the white knights, the virtue signalers, the opportunists, and for that small chunk within each of these communities of minorities who have chosen the path of locus of external control, the evil versions of Mapita and Sophie, so to speak. So while some naively say, these features are good because everyone gets what they want, gamers say no, because not everyone should get what they want. The narcissists, the white knights, the opportunists, and all the other bad actors should not get what they want. Not only because they are bad actors, but because they do not represent the paying customer. Which takes us neatly along to 2, the actors, and 2.1, the costumers.
And if they don't see the value in what you're asking for when you ask for consultants, when you ask for research, go have a coffee with your marketing team and just terrify them with the possibility of what's going to happen if they don't give you what you want. And if they don't give you what you want, what you want.
Oh! You're threatening us.
You should employ me so I can tell you what people like me will get offended by on Twitter. And if you don't employ me, well, they're gonna kick up a right stink and give you a load of bad press.
Not the most sophisticated way of getting what you want from someone, is it?
None of this is about what the customer wants, what the majority of the customer base wants.
The things this person knows about the market would fit into a thimble, and there would still be space to fit in the things she knows about video games. A lifetime ago, Philip Kotler defined the 4 P's that make up a brand's marketing mix: product, price, place, and promotion. Product, of course, refers to the good, a good that satisfies a need. And you have real needs and perceived or psychological needs. For example, any car can get you from your home to your work, but some people have large families. Others have small parking spaces to deal with on a daily basis. Others have to travel long distances frequently. And these things will define their pain points in regards to the product, which is to say, the thing or things that the car has to do for a person in addition to its basic function, which is to take him or her from their house to their work. But some people would also like their car to represent how successful they've been in life, so they have a Ferrari or a Lamborghini. And it's the same with games. We all have different pain points, different things we can't do without. And these have to do with the type of gamer that we are. And spoiler alert, none of those pain points have to do with the skin color of the characters, their sex, or their sexual orientation, but they do have to do with lore consistency and verisimilitude, for example, just so that you know. The price, of course, is self-explanatory. If your product is super premium, customers who are interested in your product expect to pay a super premium price. The same is true of games. When a AAA game comes out, most people who are interested in buying said game will have no problem paying $80 for it. But the same people may find $40 to be a scandalous price for an indie title. I paid $23.99 for The Witcher 3 when it first came out. The Witcher 3 was a massive success. People were awe-stricken with the game because it truly is one of the best games ever made. But I also saw a lot of Normicus mainstream dwellers asking online if The Witcher 3 was really that good, because for the price, it couldn't be. And I also think that's why a lot of people haven't bothered trying out Moonring, which is one of the best RPGs I have played in recent memory, and I am not even exaggerating, because it's free to play. On the other hand, people found $45 to be an outrageous price for Outward, and the hard-coded reason was because it's an indie game, and I think it's worth every penny. Place is where you acquire the product. This is important when it's a retail product. If you're Estee Lauder, you don't want your makeup to be available for purchase at Walmart, and if you're an Estee Lauder customer, that's also not where you want to go to buy it. With video games, it's different, of course, because nowadays it's either good old games or Steam, not GameStop. But there is something important to consider. In marketing, there is what we call the MOT, which sounds like a villain in a bad fantasy game, but it's not. It's the zero moment of truth.
You can't handle the truth!
And that is true, and that's why there is a moment in the buying process when the would-be customer researches a product before he or she buys it. And that's where ACG, Cannot Be Tamed, He Who Shall Not Be Named, and yes, Sweet Baby Ink Detected come into the picture to help you decide whether that game that you have been thumping for so long. That's correct. And that's why you have promo videos, tech specs, ratings, reviews, wish lists, curator groups, and many other features along those lines in both Steam and good old games. That's the new face of the place component of the marketing mix. As for promotion, this is basically letting know the customer of the existence of the product and making the case that the product is for him or her. Ideally, it should have a call to action, and it should be backed up with a reason why, and that in turn should be backed up with a reason to believe. When it comes to promotion in video games, you have everything, from the clumsy amateurish publicity company that's the only one that small indie developers can afford and say stuff like, brand new RPG in which you can create your character and level up. You can choose perks, skills, and attributes, and these decisions will have an impact on how you play the game. Make decisions and get different outcomes in our new amazing RPG. Yeah, these guys aren't big on the show don't tell principle. But you also have multi-million-dollar campaigns with amazing trailers that also get authoritative figures on board to talk about the game. And then you have those who make you play a game of spot the person who actually looks like the typical player of the game in their video ads. Ads that show more clips of diverse people sitting around in their couches, swiping their phones, and looking at themselves in the mirror, happy about being able to express their ever-changing identity, than actual footage of the different characters, their special moves, the different scenarios, and combat moves in their fucking fighting game, just to make sure the world knows about how inclusive they are. Guys, I'm going to give you a free tip here. Nobody usually gives too much of a shit about seeing him or herself in a game. But of all the gamers in the world who don't give a shit about this, which again is most gamers, the ones who give less of a shit about seeing themselves in the fucking game are the ones who play one-on-one fighting games. And yes, this includes gay, trans, and disabled people who are into fighting games. But what's important about these 4 Ps is that they have to row with the same rhythm, the same intensity, and in the same direction. And that direction is the target audience. And there are 2 ways to define your target audience, broadly speaking. One of them is demographics, certainly. So yes, sex, age group, geographical location, and income are some of the variables that make up your target audience's demographic profile. But segmentation has evolved way beyond that, and it has become clear that someone's age group, sex, and geographical location don't say much about his or her habits as a consumer. You also need to define your customers by behavior or consumer habits. And there are various methodologies by which you can do this. These methodologies are used to determine the different customer profiles that you have in a country and in a product category. One such methodology is VALS. VALS has been used worldwide to define consumer profiles. Each country has different profiles. The Argentinian VALS is not the same as the Japanese VALS or the American VALS, but let's take a look at some consumer segment descriptions in the American VALS. Innovators. Innovators are successful, sophisticated, take-charge people with high self-esteem. They are change leaders and are most receptive to new ideas and technologies. Their purchases reflect cultivated tastes for upscale, niche products and services. Thinkers. Thinkers are mature, satisfied, comfortable, and reflective. They tend to be well-educated and actively seek out information in the decision-making process. They favor durability, functionality, and value in products. Believers. Believers are strongly traditional and respect rules and authority. Because they are fundamentally conservative, they are slow to change and technology averse. They choose familiar products and established brands. As you can see, none of these descriptions have anything like people who seek a product in which they can see themselves, or people who seek a brand that reflects their political or social values. You could make a point for social values, many companies do, and they are wrong, but we'll get into why later. But these archetypes, as they are defined in the VALS methodology, aren't exactly useful to define gamers. We have our own archetypes, and they are beautifully defined in this Quantic Foundry article. Let's read a couple of these archetypes, and before you start saying, this archetype, but also this other archetype, or I don't fit squarely into any of these archetypes, remember that there are dominant and secondary archetypes. You don't have to fit squarely into any of these. Acrobat. Acrobats are solo gamers who primarily want to take on challenging gameplay, and they want to practice over and over again until they can take on the most difficult missions and bosses in the game. They enjoy games that are moderately paced, that require some thinking and figuring out the game mechanics on their own. What acrobats really don't care about is world building and window dressing. So in their popular games lists, we see titles like Super Metroid, Tetris, and The Binding of Isaac. Slayer. Slayers want to be the heroic protagonist in a cinematic story. They enjoy games with strong creative visions and highly curated narratives and experiences. Slayers are solo gamers who look for slower pace and accessible gameplay. They care very little about power progression or strategic planning and prefer to just experience the game as it unfolds in the moment. In this sense, Slayers see games as highly interactive action movies. So in their popular games, we see a variety of narrative-focused games that tend to be more linear and on rails. Architect. I think this is the predominant archetype amongst you guys who watch this channel. The architect wants planning and decision making that leads to progression and task completion in the game. They also want games with interesting settings and stories. They strongly prefer solo gameplay without teamwork or competition, so they have full control over their gameplay experience. As you can see, there's also zero presence of that idiotic nonsense of as a whatever of whatever color, sexual orientation, whatever else. I feel like these games were not made for me. This is one way to categorize your customers in the gaming world, and you'd do well to take it into account instead of these other proposed ways. And there are some who believe that you can take into account these archetypes and at the same time influence change in our industry, in our communities, and around the world. And some are successful on the gaming end of things, for now. But when it comes to influence change in our industry, that shit doesn't happen because you demand it. Rosa Parks refused to do something that made no sense socially, and because that action expressed a universal sentiment at the time, things changed.
You're not Rosa Parks, shut the fuck up. Pick up a controller and play, or don't and live your life. Like, no one cares. Like, gamers are the most, like, sort of benign, sort of accepting people. Like, back in the 80s and then, like, the 90s, it was a nerd hobby, and you and your little nerdy friends would, like, watch pro wrestling and play video games. But these people come in and they're like, I don't feel welcome. Well, because you're not. Because you're not. Yeah. Because nobody wants to be around you because you're making it about yourself and your shitty politics, and you're trying to pretend like you don't feel included. You don't feel included because you're an asshole, and that's why. It's not because you're trans or gay or black.
But stuff like this.
Men will never give a lady her due. If you desire something, I recommend taking it first and asking permission later. If you really must ask permission at all.
Or this.
I'm a clone of a man named Francois Sanon.
Or this.
Welcome to the world of Street Fighter. Are you a fighter looking for your next challenge?
Are things that your actual customers don't want to see. Some are okay with it and won't straight out boycott you because they are okayers in nature, but even they are going to eventually drop the controller, give you the middle finger, and move on to other options. Video game developers, publishers, and third-party consultants. If you scrolled through your YouTube feed a couple of weeks ago and clicked on some of the videos, you probably got the idea that Sweet Baby Inc. is single-handedly destroying the video game industry. That it is the one bad apple that is spoiling the entire basket. And nothing could be further from the truth. Sweet Baby Inc. is a third-party service provider. A third party that is hired by game development studios to do what they do. This is where the name Sweet Baby Inc. comes from.
The company's name, Sweet Baby Inc., is actually derived from the fact that we worked with a lot of different teams in previous times, and every time we worked with someone who we really vibed with, or we really felt like, okay, this is really, really going well, we would go like, wow, they were such sweet babies. And when we started Sweet Baby, we said we only want to work with sweet babies.
So these sweet babies she talks about are Xbox Game Studios, Ubisoft, 2K, Valve, Warner Bros, and many others. Also, Sweet Baby Inc. aren't the only third party in town who provide these types of services. And of course, some companies don't even hire third parties like Sweet Baby Inc. for the DEI-ification of their products. Some do that in-house, and they have proudly announced it publicly. The question is, why are there so many? Well, my hypothesis is this. There are hierarchies in these companies, and not everyone is on board with DEI for the same reasons. CEOs are on board with DEI and look favorably upon hiring companies like Sweet Baby Inc. because they want their companies to be part of this DEI credit score industry. Getting loans with preferential interest rates and investment driven their way just for ticking a few boxes is not an opportunity they are too willing to miss out on. Project managers and development teams are a different story. And that's when our precious academy comes into the picture.
I had watched the professors and the administration put the ideas of revolution into the heads of the students.
We have universities full of phonies, where the person who's actually doing something meaningful is the exception rather than the rule. We have entire disciplines that are phony to begin with.
These people have been living in an echo chamber for years, an echo chamber that normal people wouldn't believe. In the best case, they are convinced that their mission in life is to influence change in our industry, in our communities, and around the world, and bring about a positive change in society, doing their part to make the world a better place for those who have been kept in the dark. Yes, some are narcissistic and make it all about themselves and people like them, but some others are legitimate champions of the unconstrained vision of the world and cosmic justice. Then you have the gaming journos that work for outlets like Kotaku, Polygon, and others, who can write articles like this, and write replies in social media along the lines of this. Toxic manipulators who gaslight readers, blame gamers, and unabashedly take sides. It's a monument to unprofessionalism, if you ask me.
I think we need to step out of this rule that like white men can enjoy fantasy worlds, aliens, sci-fi, monsters, anything, so long as it's through a lens that looks exactly like them.
Well, yes, you are right about that. Our problem is with your brand of narrative, with your brand of diversity. We played King's Quest IV in the 80s. This game had a female protagonist, one that was not sexualized in any way, and always used wit and knowledge to overcome every challenge. But now, those of us who played King's Quest IV and had no problems with it are accused of only being able to experience the world through the eyes of a male character, because we don't like your games and we don't like you. We played Fallout in 1998, and we had to deal with First Citizen Lynette, a black lady who was a prime minister of sorts in Vault City. Some people sided with her, some people were against her. But we didn't even discuss her skin color or the fact that she was female with other Fallout fans. We didn't really care. But now those of us who played Fallout 2 are being accused of being racists because we don't like your games and we don't like you. Storm was one of the most popular characters in Marvel vs. Capcom 2 because she was one of the most OP characters in the game. Some of us played as her because lightning attack, discharge. But now we are being accused of being racists who refuse to experience a game as a woman. I think that Steve Cortez is hands down the most complex and interesting crew member in the Normandy in Mass Effect 3, and he is Latin American and gay. And a lot of people agree with me, but we are now being labeled homophobes because we don't like your games and we don't like you. So, did gamers become racist, bigots, and phobes overnight? Did these people who loathe your game now decided to become horrible people in the year 2016 out of the blue? Why didn't they have problems with diverse characters in games that go as far back as the 80s? And now we hate your diverse characters, your games, and your guts. THQ Nordic released Desperados 3, Mimimi's tactical western themed game in the year 2020. It's one of my favorite games of the decade so far. Story-wise, it featured a diverse cast of companions and NPCs. Some were good, some were neutral, and some were evil. You had Hector, the hulking Latin American giant of a man who would risk his own life to save his friend, but was not above stealing all of the booty for himself and running away with it. You had the resourceful black lady who was friends with the old white marshal who was also competent and on the side of good. You had the sneaky, clever lady who wouldn't hesitate to shoot the man who screwed her over and would have no problem calling out the protagonist on his bullshit, but would still use her sex appeal to obtain what she wanted and would look up to her uncle for protection and guidance. The story in Desperados 3 did not depict all men as evil or incompetent, nor all women as heroic and perfect. Characters were flawed and painted in realistic shades of gray. Women were competent but didn't have masculine, gruff voices or imposing behaviors and attitudes. They were strong because they were confident and resourceful, not hulking bulks of muscle because developers needed to make them literally physically strong, lest the point of a strong, independent woman be lost on the dumbass audience. Women in Desperados 3 would be compassionate and agreeable without renouncing their purpose or their ambitions. They were saved by the men when the story went that way, but they also saved the man from time to time. Called the protagonist out on his bullshit, one of them even threatened to kill him the one time he did something that struck her as terribly dishonorable. As a result, almost every checkbox of the superficial diversity list is ticked in Desperados 3 without any of it feeling forced, and especially without any of it getting in the way of the story or the fun. But this sort of dynamics is nowhere to be found in games that have been contaminated by Sweet Baby Inc., Black Girl Gamers, Ghost Baby, or DEI departments in large studios. because the people who work for these companies and DEI departments have this idiotic mentality.
And there's a problem with the Davros of old in that he's a wheelchair user who is evil. And I had problems with that, and a lot of us on the production team had the problems with that, of associating disability with evil.
So you can't have a Latin American guy be a thief because that creates a negative stereotype. You can't have a white, wise mentor who actually has something useful to teach, a damsel in distress, or a female villain without pinning her villainy to a troubled past that was caused by a man. It's all about representing their immediate reality. It's all about hijacking IPs that their target audiences have been totally fine with for decades to tell their stories and share them with people who didn't have an interest in said IP to begin with. Asset management companies. Just as it happens with Sweet Baby Inc., if you have taken an interest in this topic, but you've limited the scope of your research to YouTube personalities who comment on media and entertainment, you're probably under the impression that Blackrock is the only evil guy in the game, the final boss that pulls the strings. During the last year, some have timidly started to talk about Vanguard and Statestreet. But as it happens with Sweet Baby Inc., there is a bunch of asset management companies, investment firms, private credit managers, and banks that champion ESG and use it to coerce companies into adopting DEI hiring practices and spraying forth the message. Like others have pointed out, every AAA game studio that has worked with Sweet Baby Inc. has Blackrock, Vanguard, and/or Statestreet directly or indirectly as some of their top shareholders. And that is likely because hiring Sweet Baby Inc. is like hiring a key-in-hand service that all by itself guarantees that you are going to tick some of the boxes of the S component of the ESG formula. Better to hire these guys and let them do their black girl magic. Now, whether or not the concept of ESG is in and of itself positive is completely irrelevant, not only to this discussion but in general. Because it doesn't serve its stated purpose. It's just another entity, another device whose real purpose is to hoard power. But like I said, there are many investment firms and asset and risk management companies that are part of this nefarious industry, not just Blackrock, Vanguard, and Statestreet. One of those companies is Blackwall Capital, not to be confused with Blackrock. Its website is no longer available, and I had to dig it out using archives, and I had to pull out the information through some obscure shenaniganing. Like all these companies, Blackwall Capital goes hard in the paint with their ESG, saying that ESG considerations are an integral part of their investment. But that's business as usual. The interesting part came out when you hovered over the text, "Markets are wrong." It says, while markets are quite efficient most of the time, they are certainly not all the time. Ben Graham's analogy of the manic depressive Mr. Market, who will be wildly overexcited one day and deeply depressed the next, serves as a great mental model. We need to make the market our servant, not our master. What this means is that they do not like that people vote with their wallets. They do not like boycotts, nor any other customer-driven reaction. They like their markets predictable and stable, and the way to achieve this in their eyes is to remove you and me, also known as the ignorant customer, from the market value equation. And how do they do that? Well, enter ESG. In order to illustrate how these firms use ESG to remove you from the picture, we're going to take a look at the Alternative Credit Council's website, specifically the page titled A Borrower's Guide to Private Credit UK Edition. This page focuses mostly on small and medium enterprises and private credit managers, but on a larger scale, this is also how things work with big companies and big investment firms. You have big firms like BlackRock and other groups of investors, private credit managers who act like middlemen, and those businesses who are interested in getting a loan. Why is ESG important to private credit lenders, the page says? Private credit managers need to provide their investors with environmental, social, and governance information about the businesses they are lending to. This means that they will ask businesses questions about things such as their energy use, adherence to labor standards, and corporate governance. This supports their understanding of how a business is being managed alongside more traditional financial metrics. What this essentially means is that these private credit managers say, Mr. Blackrock, Mr. Vanguard, I'm happy to report that these guys have hired Sweet Baby Inc. to make their games inclusive. You can start sending the green now. And by the green, I mean the green we actually care about. not the one we say we care about. Now let's take a look at the Borrower's Guide to Private Credit, which you can download at the Alternative Credits Council website. Who knows, maybe you're eligible. And let's go straight to the chapter on assessing eligibility. How sustainable is the business? ESG criteria have become firmly established as standard in the financial sector to answer the question of how sustainable a business may be in the long term. Not revenue, not the number of served markets, not sales, no. Because you and I have an impact on that, because we vote with our wallet, and they wouldn't want us peasants thinking up the joint, would they? As a long-term investor, a private credit lender will therefore screen borrowers according to ESG criteria to assess the longevity of the business. Positive ESG screening. This describes the use of environmental, social, and governance factors when assessing a potential borrower. Fundamentally, ESG integration is predicated on the notion that ESG factors can be financially material to investment performance and can in turn lead to superior financial performance. Can they though? Where does this notion come from? I'm especially interested in the S component of ESG in this regard. Can social factors be financially material to investment performance and can in turn lead to superior financial performance? According to who? Oh, to the United Nations Principles for Responsible Investment, which proposes a table with examples of the questions a private credit manager may ask as part of their approach to responsible investing. One such question is, do you enforce a diversity and inclusion policy? Or maybe you get this notion from reputed market research companies like Nielsen? This is what Nielsen's website looks like these days. And under the title of Real People Are Always at the Heart of Our Data, you have this link to the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion page, which has this text. Why diversity matters. Nielsen's unwavering commitment to DE&I puts us in a unique position to influence change in our industry, in our communities, and around the world. So big proponents of the unconstrained vision of the world and cosmic justice. Together, we can fight discrimination and break bias, ensuring that all people are treated with dignity and respect. Sandra Sims Williams, Chief Diversity Officer, because that is an actual job in this company. Guys, you cannot have this on the website of a market research company. This screams demonstrative research. Companies don't want their market research providers to influence change in our industry and our community. They want to see the industry as it is. On McKinsey's website, you have this passage. When consumers are asked if they care about buying environmentally and ethically sustainable products, they overwhelmingly answer yes. In a 2020 McKinsey US Consumer Sentiment Survey, more than 60% of respondents said that they'd pay more for a product with sustainable packaging. A recent study by Nielsen IQ found that 78% of US consumers say that a sustainable lifestyle is important to them. Yet many CPG executives report that one challenge to their company's environmental, social, and governance initiatives is the inability to generate sufficient customer demands for these products. There are similar stories of companies launching new products incorporating ESG-related claims, only to find that sales fell short of expectations. Can both of these things be true? Do consumers really care whether products incorporate ESG-related claims? Do shoppers follow through and buy these products while standing in front of store shelves or browsing online? Do their real-life buying decisions diverge from their stated preferences? And see, if as a researcher, your question is, would you rather buy products from companies who claim they are committed to environmental and ethical sustainability, or from companies who don't? What the fuck do you think the answer is going to be?
To me, the answer is clear.
Of course everyone's going to say yes. The problem is that they present this result. 78% of US consumers say that a sustainable lifestyle is important to them. But they conveniently failed to mention and promote this other part of the study. When we asked US consumers about the most important factors influencing their purchasing behavior, they gave a relatively low rank to the environmental aspect of products and their packaging. Indeed, across all end-use areas we surveyed, price, quality, and brand rank well ahead of packaging or environmental concerns.
Now that is unsurprising.
I'm more interested in the social claims of ESG. How did those rank? Oh, I see. But Alex, these categories don't have anything to do with entertainment, let alone video games. Right you are, imaginary proxy strawman that I use to get my arguments across. So let's take a look at the video game market specifically and the driving factors behind purchases in this market in the year 2022. Do you see how much the game made me feel represented here? Or diversity and inclusive features? Nah, me neither. But wait, couldn't these things be maybe indicators of overall quality or interesting story and premise?
You serious?
I'm betting on unlikely.
So let's say that you're one of these small, poor, struggling video game studios and you find yourself in a position in which you need to please a very competitive, very demanding market on one side, and on the other, private credit managers and big asset management companies offering you to give you preferential loans and promising to drive investment your way if you enforce diversity and inclusion policies. What are you going to do? But more importantly, what are we, the customers, going to do about it?
In the end, the universe tends to unfold as it should.
What should we do about it? Nothing, unless you're interested in creating your own games, films, and TV shows. In that case, go straight ahead and do it now, because there is no time better than now to do it. If you are an indie developer or an independent film producer, the iron is hot now, so go ahead and strike it. People are beginning to realize that their favorite IPs are never going to go back to being what they were. They are realizing that AAA games and Hollywood productions are not doing it for them, but indie films and games are. And if you are a customer, well, you're going to have to do a little bit more research, because the current mainstream shitty agenda-driven and poorly made productions that are on offer on your paid TV provider and on your local cinema, and the AAA titles that flood your YouTube feed still dominate media and marketing spaces. But not for long. But there's a lot of good stuff out there. Clean, unpolluted, top-tier entertainment waiting to be discovered. It's just a matter of time before you guys start to place it front and center. And I can't wait to talk to you about it all. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, thank you for watching all the way up until now. If you like what you are seeing on this channel, please consider subscribing and clicking that notification bell to avoid the usual YouTube shenanigans. Share the video if you thought it was cool, but most importantly, never stop gaming, but don't let gaming get in the way of your hopes and dreams. Bye everyone.